The planet was cold and silent. Gray clouds covered the sky, and strong winds moved across the empty land. Tall black rocks stood like broken towers, and the ground was covered with dust and sharp stones. No cities, no lights, no signs of life, only a small landing ship. The alien ship slowly touched the ground with a low humming sound. Blue lights flashed under its metal body as the engines powered down. The door opened. 4 tall alien figures stepped outside. They wore silver armor and breathing masks. Their glowing eyes scanned the dark land around them. In the middle of them was a small figure sitting on a floating medical chair. She was just a child. Her skin was pale blue, and her large eyes were filled with fear. Thin silver markings ran across her face, showing that she belonged to a powerful alien species known across the galaxy. But something was wrong. The girl could not move her legs. She looked down at them often, as if hoping they would suddenly work again. But they never did. One of the aliens spoke in a cold voice. "This is the place." Another alien looked at the girl with clear disgust. "She cannot walk. She will never serve the Empire." The child understood their language. Her small hands tightened around the sides of the chair. "Please," she whispered softly. "I will try harder." But the aliens ignored her. Their species believed one thing above all. Only the strong deserved to live. Weakness was shameful, and the girl was. Born weak, the leader of the group stepped forward. His armor was darker than the others, showing his high rank. "This planet has no colonies nearby," he said calmly. "No one will find her." The girl's eyes widened. What do you mean?" she asked with a shaking voice. The leader looked down at her as if she were nothing more than a broken machine. "You cannot walk. You cannot fight. You cannot work." He paused for a moment. "You are a burden to the Empire." The words felt like knives in her chest. "No, please," she cried. "I can still learn. I can still help." One of the other aliens laughed quietly. "A cripple helping the Empire? Impossible." The leader pressed a control on the floating chair, slowly. The chair lowered to the ground. The girl suddenly realized what was happening. Her breathing became fast. "You can't leave me here," she shouted. The wind grew stronger, blowing dust across the empty land, but the aliens were already turning away. The leader spoke one last time without looking back. "Your existence ends here." The girl reached out her small hand toward them. "Please, don't go." But they were already walking back toward the ship. The door closed, the engines began to glow again. The girl watched in horror. As the ship slowly rose into the sky, tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'll be good, I promise," she whispered. But her voice disappeared into the wind. The ship grew smaller and smaller, till it became a tiny light in the sky. Then it was gone. The planet became silent again. The girl sat alone on the cold ground. She tried to move her legs, but they remained still like lifeless stone. Minutes passed, then hours. The temperature began to fall as the sun slowly disappeared behind the dark clouds. Strange animal sounds echoed from far away in the rocky hills. Predators. The girl hugged herself and looked around in fear. Her species had advanced technology, powerful ships, and great cities, but none of that mattered now. Here, she was just a helpless child on a deadly world. Her stomach hurt from hunger. Her body shook from the cold. Slowly, hope began to fade from her eyes. Maybe her people were right. Maybe she really was useless. Maybe this was how her story would end, but far above the planet. Something unexpected appeared. A small human exploration ship entered the atmosphere. Inside the cockpit, a human pilot studied his scanner. His name was Daniel Carter. He was returning from a long survey mission when a strange signal appeared on his screen. Ah, life signal, very weak. Daniel frowned. That's strange, he muttered. There were supposed to be no intelligent life forms on this planet. But the signal was clear. Someone was down there. Someone. Alive, Daniel changed the ship's course. The engines turned, and the ship began descending toward the surface. Below him, the small alien girl sat alone in the cold wind, slowly losing consciousness. She had no idea that somewhere above the clouds, a human was coming, and that single decision was about to change both of their lives forever. Daniel, Carter's small exploration ship, moved slowly through the thick gray clouds of the lonely planet. The wind pushed against the metal body of the ship, causing it to shake slightly. Inside the cockpit, Daniel watched the scanner carefully. The signal was still there, a weak life signal. But it was not human. Daniel leaned closer to the screen. "That's impossible," he said quietly. This planet had never been listed as a place with intelligent life. It was only supposed to be a rocky, empty world used for mineral surveys. Yet the signal was clear. Someone was alive down there. Daniel adjusted the controls and guided the ship lower toward the surface. Through the front window, he could now see the dark, rocky ground and sharp cliffs. Dust storms moved across the empty land like giant gray waves. Then the scanner beeped. Again, the signal was very close now. "Right below me," Daniel said. He slowly landed the ship between two large rocks. The engines powered down with a deep humming sound. For a moment, Daniel sat quietly. Something about this situation felt strange. If someone was here, where was their ship? Where was their team? Why was the signal so weak? Daniel grabbed a small medical scanner and placed a compact energy pistol on his belt. This planet could still have dangerous animals. He walked toward the airlock door. The door opened with a soft hiss. Cold wind rushed inside. Daniel stepped onto the rocky ground and looked around. At first, he saw nothing, only dust, rocks, and endless empty land. Then the scanner beeped again. Daniel turned his head slowly toward a large, dark rock nearby. And that was when he saw her. A small figure lying on the ground. Daniel froze. It was an alien child. Her skin was pale blue, and her silver markings were faint under the dust covering her face. Her body looked thin and weak. She was barely moving. Daniel quickly ran toward her. When he got closer, he noticed something else. Her legs were completely still. She could not move them at all. The girl opened her eyes slowly when she heard his footsteps. Her vision was blurry, but she saw a tall, strange creature standing above her. A human. She had seen humans before in galactic records. Her species believed humans were emotional and unpredictable, dangerous in strange ways. Fear filled her eyes. She tried to push herself backward, but her arms were too weak. Daniel raised his hands slowly so she would not feel threatened. "Hey, easy," he said gently. Of course, she could not understand his words, but his voice sounded calm. Angry, not cruel. Daniel looked around the area again. There were no supplies. No shelter. No ship. Nothing. Only the child. He immediately understood what had happened. Someone had left her here. Someone had abandoned her. Daniel felt a wave of anger rise inside him. "What kind of monsters leave a kid like this?" he muttered. He carefully used his scanner to check her condition. Her heartbeat was slow. Her body temperature was dropping. If she stayed here much longer, she would die. The girl watched his strange device with fear. She expected pain. She expected punishment. But instead, the human slowly removed his jacket and wrapped it around her small body. Warmth touched her skin. She looked at him with confusion. Why would he do that? Daniel gently lifted her into his arms. She was incredibly light. Too light. The girl was shocked. Her own people rarely touched her. To them, she was a mistake. A weak child not worth caring for. But this human held her carefully, as if she were something valuable. Daniel carried her back toward the ship. Inside the airlock, warm air surrounded them. The girl's eyes moved around the strange metal room. Human technology looked very different from her species' machines. Daniel placed her carefully onto a medical bed. Soft lights turned on as the ship's medical system began scanning her body. The computer showed the results on the screen. Daniel read them slowly. "Spinal nerve damage," he said quietly. That explained why she could not walk. But there was more severe dehydration, malnutrition, exhaustion. Daniel looked at the unconscious child. His mind raced with thoughts. Helping her would not be simple. Our species might come looking for her. Taking responsibility for an alien child could cause serious problems. He could leave her at the next space station or report the situation to authorities. That would be the safe choice, the logical choice. Daniel leaned back in the chair and looked at her again. She looked so small in the large medical bed, alone, abandoned. Just a child who never had a chance. Daniel sighed deeply. Then he shook his head. "No," he said quietly. He stood up and walked toward the control panel. The ship's engines slowly powered up again. A new course appeared on the navigation screen, toward the nearest station. But toward his home colony. Daniel looked back at the small alien girl sleeping under a warm blanket. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. Outside the ship, the engines roared as the human vessel lifted into the dark sky. Far away, in deep space, unknown to Daniel. Several powerful alien ships had already discovered the girl's survival signal. And they were coming. The human ship moved quietly through the darkness of space. Stars stretched across the black sky like tiny lights. Inside the ship, everything was calm. The engines hummed softly as the vessel traveled toward the human colony. In the medical room, the small alien girl slowly opened her eyes. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. The soft white lights above her were strange. The air felt warm. The bed under her body was comfortable. This place was nothing like the cold, rocky planet. Her eyes moved around the room carefully. Smooth metal walls, quiet machines, soft glowing screens. Then she saw him, the human. Daniel Carter sat in a chair nearby, watching a small data screen. When he noticed the girl moving, he quickly stood up. "Oh, you're awake," he said, gently. The girl became tense immediately. Fear returned to her eyes. She tried to move away, but her body was too weak. Her legs still refused to move. Daniel noticed her fear and slowly stepped back to give her space. "It's okay," he said calmly. "You're safe." Of course, she did not understand his words. But his voice sounded peaceful, not threatening. The girl watched him carefully. Humans were strange creatures. Her people described them as emotional and unpredictable. But this one had saved her. She remembered being carried. She remembered. Warmth. Daniel picked up a small container and walked toward her slowly. Inside the container was water. He pointed at it, then at her. "Drink," he said. The girl hesitated at first, but her throat felt dry and painful. Slowly, she accepted the container. She drank carefully. The cool water felt wonderful. Daniel smiled a little when he saw her drinking. "Good," he said quietly. Next, he brought soft food from the ship's supply unit. It was simple human nutrition paste designed for long missions. He placed it beside her and waited. The girl studied the strange food for a moment before slowly eating. It tasted different from what she New, but it was warm, and it filled the empty pain in her stomach. After she finished, the girl looked at Daniel again. There was confusion in her eyes. Why was he helping her? Her own people had abandoned her without hesitation, but this human treated her like she mattered. Daniel noticed she was studying him. He thought for a moment. Then he pointed to himself. Daniel. The girl blinked. He repeated slowly. Daniel. Oh, she understood. It was his name. The girl hesitated before touching her own chest. My name. Luma, she said softly in broken galactic basic. Daniel's eyes lit up. Luma, he repeated carefully. She nodded slightly. For the first time since being abandoned, the girl felt something new. Not fear, not sadness. Something small and warm. Hope. Over the next few days, the ship continued traveling through space. During that time, Daniel helped Luma recover her strength. He adjusted the medical bed so she could sit comfortably. The ship's computer translated simple words between their languages. Slowly, communication became easier. Luma learned many things about humans. Humans believed every life had value. Humans protected children. Humans even cared for people who were weak. These ideas were very strange to her. In her species, strength was everything. Weak children were seen as mistakes. Daniel also learned more about Luma. Her people were part of a powerful alien empire that controlled many star systems. They were feared across the galaxy, but they were also very strict. Luma had been born with nerve damage in her spine. Because of that, she could never walk. Her family had hidden her for many years, afraid of what the Empire would do if they discovered her weakness. Eventually, the truth was revealed, and the Empire decided she should be removed. Daniel listened quietly when the translator finished her story. He felt anger again, not at Luma, at the people who had abandoned her. Daniel looked at her gently. You're not a mistake, he said. The translator repeated the sentence in her language. Luma stared at him in surprise. No one had ever said that to her before. Later that day, Daniel showed her something interesting. A small observation window in the ship. Through the window, Luma saw space clearly for the first time. Endless stars. Beautiful glowing clouds of distant galaxies. She pressed her hands against the glass in wonder. It's beautiful, she whispered. Daniel smiled. Yeah, he said. It really is. For the first time in her life, Luma laughed softly. But far away, deep in space, danger was already moving. A fleet of powerful alien warships had detected her survival signal. The Empire had learned something impossible. The abandoned child was still alive. And now, a human had taken her. The human ship continued its long journey through space. Inside, life slowly became normal for Daniel and Luma. Every day, Luma grew a little stronger. The food and medical care helped her body recover from the days she had spent alone on the cold planet. She still could not move her legs. But she was no longer weak and shaking. Daniel made small changes to the ship so she could move around more easily. He built a simple floating seat using spare equipment, allowing her to move across the ship without needing to walk at first. Luma felt embarrassed using it, but Daniel treated it like it was completely normal to him. It was just a solution to a problem, nothing more. Slowly, Luma began learning more human words. The ship's translator helped, but Daniel also liked teaching her simple phrases himself. Hello, he said one day. Luma smiled slightly. Hello, she repeated. Good morning, good morning. Daniel laughed softly. You're learning fast. Luma did not understand every word, but she understood the feeling behind them. Kindness, something her own people rarely showed. One evening, Daniel sat at the control panel, studying information about Luma's species. The data made his expression serious. Her people were known across the galaxy as the Valari Empire. They controlled dozens of planets and had one of the strongest military fleets in known space, but they were also famous for their harsh traditions. Only strength was respected. Weakness was erased. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "So that's why they abandoned you," he said quietly. Behind him, Luma sat near the observation window. Watching stars pass by, she had heard the name Valari Empire before. It was the name of her home, the name of the people who left her behind. Daniel walked over and sat beside her. "Luma," he said gently. She looked at him. "My people are," she said slowly. Her voice sounded sad. "They do not like broken things." Daniel shook his head. "You're not broken." The translator repeated his words. Luma looked down at her motionless legs. "But I cannot walk." Daniel crossed his arms and thought for a moment. "Walking doesn't decide your value," he said again. The translator repeated his words. Luma stared at him quietly. No one had ever spoken like this before. To her people, strength meant power, speed, and perfection. But humans seemed to believe something very different. Daniel stood up and walked toward the ship's storage area. After a few minutes, he returned with a small metal device. It looked like a light mechanical frame. "What is it?" Luma asked. "Something that might help you move better." Daniel said. It was not advanced technology, just a simple support system designed for injured humans. Daniel carefully attached the frame to Luma's floating seat, giving her better control and balance. When she tried moving forward, the seat responded smoothly. Her eyes widened with excitement. She moved across the room once. Then again, a small smile appeared on her face. For the first time, she could move freely without help. "This is amazing," she whispered. Daniel grinned. "Told you." For a moment, everything felt peaceful. But suddenly, the ship's warning system beeped loudly. Daniel turned quickly toward the control panel. A red signal flashed on the screen. Unknown ships detected, and they were very close. Daniel's expression became serious. "That's not good," he muttered. Luma slowly floated closer to him. "What is it?" she asked. Daniel zoomed in on the scanner. Several large vessels appeared on the display. Their shape was sharp and powerful. Luma's eyes widened in fear the moment she saw them. "I know those ships," she whispered. Daniel looked at her. "They belong to my people, the Valari Empire." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. The scanner showed at least 5 warships. Each one was much larger and stronger than his small exploration vessel. "Why would they come here?" Daniel asked. Luma's face turned pale. "They came for me." Daniel looked back at the screen. The alien ships were already changing direction, heading straight toward them. Inside the cockpit, the quiet humming of the ship suddenly felt very small. Daniel knew something important. The Valari Empire did not send warships for simple problems. If they had come all this way, they were not planning to leave without the girl. And Daniel had already made one decision very clear. He was not giving her back, even if the entire empire demanded it. The warning lights inside Daniel's ship flashed red again. 5 large Valari warships moved through space like dark giants. Their metal bodies were sharp and powerful, covered with glowing blue weapon systems. Compared to them, Daniel's small exploration ship looked tiny. Inside the cockpit, Daniel stared at the scanner with a serious face. "They're fast," he said quietly. Luma floated beside him in her small support chair. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked at the screen. Those ships were from her home empire. She knew what they meant. The Valari did not travel with warships unless they were ready to take something by force. "They will take me back," Luma whispered. Daniel looked at her. "They'll have to talk to me first." Luma shook her head slowly. "My people do not talk about weakness," she said sadly. "They erase it." Daniel leaned back in his chair and thought for a moment. Running was impossible. His ship was not fast enough to escape a military fleet, and fighting them would be suicide. He had only one choice: communication. Daniel pressed a few buttons on the control panel. "Let's see what they want," he said. The communication screen lit up. A moment later, a tall alien figure appeared on the display. The Valari commander. His armor was dark and elegant, showing his high rank in the Empire. His glowing eyes studied Daniel carefully. The alien spoke in a calm but cold voice. "Human vessel, identify yourself." Daniel activated the translator. "My name is Daniel." "Carter," he replied, "independent explorer." The Valari commander's eyes narrowed slightly. "Our scanners confirm that you are carrying a Valari citizen." Daniel crossed his arms. "You mean the child you abandoned on that planet?" For a moment, silence filled the communication. "Channel," the commander did not look surprised. "Yes," he said simply. Daniel felt anger rise inside him again. "You left a disabled child to die," Daniel said. "You call that normal?" The Valari commander remained calm. "She is defective," he replied. "Our laws are clear." Luma lowered her head. Even hearing the words again hurt. But Daniel did not stay silent. "She's a kid," he said firmly, "not a broken machine." The alien commander ignored the comment. "Return the girl to us immediately," he ordered. Daniel shook his head. "No." The word surprised everyone in the room. Even Luma looked up quickly. The commander's glowing eyes became sharper. "Human," he said slowly, "you do not understand the situation." "Oh, I understand it perfectly," Daniel replied. "You threw away a child because she couldn't walk." Daniel leaned closer to the screen. "And now she's under my protection." Inside the Valari flagship, several alien officers looked shocked. Humans were not supposed to challenge the Empire like this. The commander's voice became colder. "You are one man in a small ship," he said. "We are the Valari Empire." Daniel smiled slightly. "Yeah, I noticed." The silence between them grew heavy. Behind Daniel, Luma watched everything with wide eyes. No one had ever defended her like this before. No one had ever stood against the Empire for her. The commander spoke again. "The girl belongs to our people." Daniel shook his head. "You abandoned that right when you left her to die." The alien commander studied him carefully. "Humans are strange creatures," he said. Daniel shrugged. "That's what everyone says." The Valari officer paused for a moment. Then he asked something unexpected. "Why protect her?" Daniel did not hesitate. "'Cause it's the right thing to do." The translator repeated the words. Inside the alien fleet, confusion spread. Among the officers, Valari had never built their society on kindness. Strength was their law. Weakness was removed. But this human believed something completely different. Daniel continued speaking. "She's not a mistake," he said. "She's a person." Luma felt tears form in her eyes. The commander looked at her through the screen. For the first time, his expression changed slightly. "Step forward," he ordered. Luma hesitated, but slowly moved her chair closer to the communication screen. The commander studied her carefully. "You survived," he said. Luma's voice was quiet but steady. "Yes, explain." Luma looked at Daniel for a moment. Then she turned back toward the screen. "This human saved me." She paused before continuing. "He treated me like family." Inside the Valari flagship, the officers exchanged silent looks. Family. It was a strange word for them. Daniel folded his arms and waited. Finally, the Valari commander spoke again. "Human Daniel Carter," he said. "Yes, you have interfered with the natural order of our empire." Daniel smiled again. "Maybe your order needed interfering." The commander did not answer immediately. Instead, he studied both of them carefully. The child they had abandoned, and the human who refused to give her back. For the first time, the Valari Empire faced something it did not fully understand, a species that protected the weak, instead of destroying them. And this meeting was only the beginning. Because the decision made here could change the future of two civilizations. The silence between the human ship and the Valari fleet felt heavy. 5 giant warships floated in the dark space around Daniel's small vessel. Their weapons were active, glowing softly in the darkness. One command from the Valari commander could easily destroy the human ship. But the commander had not given that order. Instead, he continued watching the screen. On one side stood Daniel Carter, a single human with a calm but stubborn expression. On the other side was Luma, the girl the Empire had abandoned. The Valari officers behind the commander whispered quietly among themselves. This situation was strange to them. No one had ever refused the Empire before, and no one had ever defended a weak Valari child. Finally, the commander spoke again. "Human Daniel Carter," he said slowly. "You risk your life for a defective child." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "She's not defective," he replied calmly. The commander ignored the comment. "You could leave now," the alien continued. "This matter does not concern your species." Daniel shook his head. "It concerns me," he said. Luma looked at him quietly. She still could not believe someone would stand against the Empire for her. The commander turned his attention to the girl. "Luma," he said. Her body became tense when she heard her name. "Yes, Commander. You were declared unfit for Valari society," he continued. She lowered her head slightly. "I know. You were given a peaceful ending on an empty world." Daniel frowned at those words. "That's what you call peaceful," he muttered. The commander ignored him again, but now the alien leader said, "You stand before us alive." Luma slowly raised her eyes. "Yes." "And you claim this human has cared for you?" "Yes." The commander studied her carefully. "What did he give you that your own people did not?" The question surprised everyone. Even Daniel looked. Curious, Luma remained silent for a moment as she searched for the right words. Then she answered quietly, "He gave me chance." The translator repeated her words. Inside the Valari flagship, several officers looked confused. "A chance?" the commander asked. Luma nodded. "My people saw weakness," she said. "He saw a person." The room became silent again. Daniel said nothing. He simply let her speak. Luma continued. "When I was left on that planet, I believed my life was over." She looked down at her legs. "I thought I was worthless." Then she looked up again. "But the human did not see me that way." The commander's glowing eyes remained fixed on her. "What did he do?" "Look toward Daniel." "He helped me eat when I was too weak," she said. "He gave me water. He carried me when I could not move." Daniel shifted slightly in his seat, feeling a little embarrassed hearing it all. "And when I woke up," Luma continued, "he did not look at me with shame." Her voice grew stronger. "He looked at me with kindness." Some Valari officers exchanged uneasy looks. Kindness was not a word often used in their empire. Luma lifted her small floating chair slightly to show the support device Daniel had built. "He helps me move again," she said. "It is simple human technology. But to me, it felt like freedom." The commander stared at the device quietly. Something about this situation was beginning to disturb him. For thousands of years, Valari society had believed weakness must be removed. It was their law. It was their tradition. But now, a single human had shown the galaxy something different, and the abandoned child was standing in front of them as proof. The commander finally turned his gaze toward Daniel again. "You changed her," he said. Daniel shrugged slightly. "No," he replied. "I just treated her like a human." The Valari officers looked confused again. "But she is not human," one of them said quietly. Daniel smiled a little. "Does that really matter?" The simple question created another wave of silence. Luma watched the commander carefully. For the first time in her life, she saw uncertainty in a Valari leader's eyes. The Empire had always been sure of its beliefs, but now those beliefs were being questioned. Finally, the commander spoke again. "Luma," he said. "Yes." "Do you wish to return to the Valari Empire?" The question shocked her. Return to the people who abandoned her. She looked down at her hands for a moment. Then she slowly shook her head. "No." The answer echoed through the command room. The Valari officers stared at her in disbelief. "You reject your own people?" the commander asked. Luma's voice was calm but clear. "I do not reject my people," she said. "I reject the belief that I should never have lived." Then she looked toward Daniel. "This human showed me that life has value, even when it is not perfect." The Valari commander remained silent for a long moment. His empire believed strength defined worth, but this child had survived because of something else entirely: compassion, and that idea was more powerful than any weapon in his fleet. Because if what the human believed was true, then the Valari Empire had been wrong for a very long time, and the commander now faced a decision that could change everything. The dark silence of space surrounded the ships. The Valari fleet still floated around Daniel's small vessel, but no weapons fired, no commands were given. Inside the Valari flagship, the commander remained still as he listened to Luma's words. For many years, the Valari Empire had followed one rule: strength decides value. Weakness had no place in their society. It was a belief older than most of their stars. But now that belief was being challenged by something simple: a human and a child they had abandoned. The commander slowly stood from his command seat. His officers watched him carefully. "What the child says is unusual," he said quietly. One of the officers stepped forward. "Commander, the Empire's laws are clear," the officer reminded him. "Weakness must not be allowed to exist." The commander did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked again at the screen showing Daniel and Luma. The girl was small. Her legs still could not move. Yet somehow, she had survived on a deadly planet. She had crossed space. She had spoken in front of the Empire's fleet without fear. Maybe strength was not always physical. The commander spoke again. "Human Daniel Carter," he said. Daniel crossed his arms. "I'm still here." "You have defied the Valari Empire," the commander continued. "Yeah," Daniel replied calmly. "I noticed." The commander studied him carefully. "You protected someone your species had no reason to protect." Daniel shrugged. "She needed help." The commander turned his eyes toward Luma. "You wish to remain with this human?" Luma answered without hesitation. "Yes." The officers behind the commander reacted with quiet shock. No Valari had ever chosen a life outside the Empire. But the commander did not seem angry. Instead, he seemed thoughtful. Finally, he spoke. The words no one expected. "Then you may stay." Silence filled both ships. Even Daniel blinked in surprise. "You're letting her go?" Daniel asked. The commander nodded slowly. The Valari Empire abandoned her first, he said. We have no right to claim her now. Behind him, several officers looked uncomfortable, but none of them argued. The commander continued. However, this situation has revealed something important. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Oh. The commander looked directly at Luma. Our people believed weakness must be erased, he said. But this child survived because someone believed she deserved to live. He paused before speaking again. That belief is not weakness. For the first time, the Valari commander showed something close to respect. Human Daniel Carter. He said, "You have shown courage that many warriors in our empire do not possess." Daniel smiled slightly. "I just did what anyone should do." The commander gave a small nod. "Perhaps your species understands strength better than we do." Then he turned toward his officers. "Record this event," he ordered. This human has shown us a new perspective. The Valari fleet slowly powered down its weapons. Outside in the dark space, the tension disappeared. Daniel leaned back in his chair with a long breath. "Well," he said quietly, "that went better than I expected." Luma smiled for the first time since the fleet arrived. "They are leaving," she said, and she was right. One by one, the giant Valari warships began turning away. Their engines glowed brightly as they prepared to jump into faster-than-light travel. Before the flagship disappeared, the commander spoke one last time through the communication channel. "Luma, yes, Commander. You were once seen as the weakest among our people." Luma listened carefully. "But today," he continued, "you showed the courage to challenge an empire." The commander paused. "That is true strength." Then the screen went dark. The Valari fleet vanished into space. Inside the human ship, the room felt quiet again. Luma looked out the observation window at the stars. For the first time in her life, she felt truly free. Daniel walked over and stood beside her. "So," he said, "what do you want to do now?" Luma thought for a moment. Then she smiled softly. "I want to live." Daniel laughed. "That's a pretty good plan." Years later, the story of that moment would spread across the galaxy. It's a story about a human who refused to abandon a child. A story about a girl who proved that weakness does not define a life. And slowly, even the Valari Empire began to change its ancient laws. Disabled children were no longer abandoned. They were given a chance. Because one human made a simple decision on a lonely planet. He stopped. He helped. And in doing so, he changed the future of an entire civilization.